All right, so now we're going to take a tiny break and look at pastoralists and how they fit into this whole thing. And then we'll come back to some of the cultural aspects of civilization. So, pastoralists tended to, well, in Afro-Eurasia, so Africa, Europe, and Asia, that's the first of many times you'll hear that term throughout the year, domesticated animals and led their herds across the land. So these people aren't like Jack Kerouac. They're not just going out on an adventure. They have specific paths that they're taking. They don't have as many possessions as other societies, and so they're socially stratified, but not as much as agriculturalists. So some people have more power than others, but in general, everyone's more equal. The thing that the pastoral nomads do is that they are bumping into other societies um, and passing ideas, but also because they have a different function, they have different specializations technologically. For example, they don't really need to make plows, but what they can make really well is wheels, right? So this is an example of how the Hittites, a group from northern Mesopotamia, modern Turkey, took the wheel from this big, huge, clunky thing to this really beautiful, sophisticated wheel. And you can imagine this wheel is going to be just as strong because of the spoke technology, but also much faster, much swifter, so it's better for chariots. And this technology then gets passed around. Another example of a group of people that does this, and if you want to read about them, you can read about them. I believe they're in chapter 2 or chapter 3, is the Hyksos, Hyksos. Another really important group, very important, of pastoralists is the Indo-Europeans. These people are known as the Aryans, not like in Germany, but this is different. And their homeland is here. And from there, they migrated all over the place. And this is why the languages throughout Europe are very connected. So, for example, pater in Sanskrit, word for father, is very similar to pater in Latin for father. So same root, like, and also the languages are constructed really similarly too. They also pass along different technology that was used with horses and weaponry that they had, and they spread that around. Eventually, they arrived in India, where their culture combined with the Dravidians, and this is actually like kind of controversial history in India, although science backs that up. Okay, so some of the different technology that they passed is compound bows, which were both, I guess you could say, easier to shoot accurately and more powerful. I'll get a little bit of pushback on that, I'm sure. That's good for hunting and war. So they also perfected iron metallurgy for things like swords and tools, and this was stronger and less brittle. And you can see that an example of that. They also perfected technology with chariots. This is what the Hyksos did with Egypt. They actually conquered Egypt with their sweet chariots, and the Egyptians stole their technology and kicked them out. And horseback riding. This gave them a huge advantage in battle because horses are really swift, much swifter than a human running on 2 feet. Okay, so this gets along kind of with the unique unique culture, but we're going to move back into civilizations now. These early civilizations developed unique culture, but the unique cultures that they had were oftentimes had similar characteristics. So, for example, all civilizations used monumental architecture. This is a ziggurat. This one is actually in Ur, and this is in Mesopotamia. So this ziggurat was a temple, but it wasn't the type of temple that you go inside like a church. So out front here, you'd have like markets, and generally here you'd purchase offerings. And then up here, this was only like the priests could go up here. So only for priests, and this is where they would make their sacrifices. And sacrifice, as you can see if you've read the Old Testament, is a very important part of these ancient religions, whether it's monotheistic or polytheistic. Here we have another piece of monumental architecture. This is the pyramids in Egypt. This is the pyramids in Latin America. In Mexico, this is the Pyramid of the Sun. So you can see similar ideas. But this was actually not a temple, it was a tomb for the pharaoh. This is it represents the city planning. This is in Mohenjo-Daro. And this was the only civilization to have a sophisticated underground sewer system. And this is the citadel, or the center of the city. This is a seal that we can't read yet. Like I said, we cannot understand their writing yet. The arts were very much supported by elites, and this is true of all different societies. This is in the corner. This is an example of sophisticated jewelry. This is a bracelet, and it's from Mesopotamia. It's made out of gold. These are hieroglyphics from Egypt. Here we have a bust from the Indus River Valley civilization. This is bronze from the Shang. And here we have a basalt head. We don't really know what these heads were used for, but they're huge, and they are probably of a very important person. Just a guess. All of these societies had their own systems of record keeping. Sanskrit was brought to India and morphed from the Aryans and Dravidians. And the first example is religious texts, as we'll see. This is Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, or the Indus civilization. Look at that elephant there. Here we have cuneiform. This is from Mesopotamia, and it's the first writings. This is also from Mesopotamia and is geometry. Here we have Phoenician. And the Phoenicians are the first people. They're from close to Mesopotamia. And they create a phonetic alphabet. Oh, we get the word phonetic from Phoenician. And phone from Phoenician as well. So this means that the letters have different sounds. So basically this is where our alphabet comes from. It comes from the Phoenicians, and you can kind of check that out here. Maybe I'll make that bigger for just a second so you can see. So instead of having a symbol for each thing, you have a symbol for, and we'll talk about that in just a second, you have a symbol for the sound, right? So you can kind of put the word together by sound, rather than like cuneiform, which is pictograms or pictographs. or ideographs, which is a symbol for an idea. This is like Chinese characters today. And then here we have something called quipu, which was used in South America. And these different ropes were used for record keeping. They're different lengths, different beads, different colors. All that stuff means something. So all of these record keeping systems arise with economics and move into political, because you need a way to record, first of all, your transactions economically, so you know whether you're getting ripped off or not. And then you want to keep records. And we see an example of that here. This is a lamp from Mesopotamia. This is again from the Louvre. Yes, that is a dog. The type of writing that is not on the previous slides is the Sanskrit, or excuse me, oh my goodness, is the pictographs from China. The earliest Chinese writing was on bones and turtle shells, and this was used by diviners. So people who were like future tellers, like the Oracle of Delphi in Greek society, and their job was to communicate with spirits and to determine the future. So this would be like, you would ask them, how many kids am I going to have? Or am I going to rule over China? And you would write that onto the animal bone, and then you would heat it over a fire, and then the oracle would examine the cracks and then tell you. They would actually write down their determination based on those cracks. And so we see both the questions and the answers, and this is the first area that we have Chinese writing. All right, so this led to the writing of legal codes, and the reason for this is because there are so many people and you need to regulate them. And this is the way for the king to get authority and to keep civility. The legal codes reflected different people's social statuses, and they reflected the theocratic government, because a lot of the reason for the laws was brought back to God. And they reflected the different roles that different jobs people in society would have. So for example, this is the Babylonian king getting the rules from God, or their God. And the Code of Hammurabi is actually not the first law code, but it's the one of the earliest and the most complete. It is from Mesopotamia, and Hammurabi was a Babylonian king, and this is the stele where the code is written. So all of this is the code, and this is again Hammurabi and the god that he got the code from, and this is me, and this is in the Louvre in Paris. All right, so the last thing we need to talk about in this slideshow is religion, and we're going to do that in the last segment. So stay tuned.